Welcome to the webinar, Work-Related Second Language Learning for Labor Market Integration and Participation. In short, Language for Work. My name is Susanna Sliwensky and I'm from the ECML, and I'm honored to be joined today by 5 distinguished experts in work-related language education. Now, before I introduce the experts, let me say a few words about the ECML to set the scene for the webinar on language for work. I'll keep it brief and just touch on what the ECML is, what the Language for Work team contributes to the ECML's mission, and why work-related language education matters for all of us in Europe. So the ECML, what kind of organization is that? Some of you may know the ECML is part of the Council of Europe, which stands for Human Rights, Democracy, and the Rule of Law. And it is in this context that the ECML offers activities and resources for language education and linguistic inclusion as key pillars of democracy. Our current program is entitled Languages at the Heart of Democracy, and it highlights how language education supports active participation in society. Projects cover topics like plurilingual well-being, artificial intelligence in language education, or global citizenship. Now, we also offer on-demand so-called training and consultancy in ECML member states. That's workshops for practitioners, such as teacher educators, teachers, and curriculum developers. And there is a very rich website where the ECML shares all its materials for free. Now, let me use the opportunity, dear participants, to ask you a question. Have you come across ECML resources or activities that you can recommend? Please share your experience in the chat. Now, today's webinar is devoted to the Language for Work team. The ECML's core activities often focus on schools and education professionals working with younger learners. So, in a way, the Language for Work stands out because it is addressing the needs of adults, more specifically adult migrants. The team has carried out 2 very successful ECML projects between 2012 and 2018, and the resulting Language for Work website offers a collection of innovative tools and real-life experiences from across Europe. Now, let me highlight 2 more things before I hand over to the experts. The ECML's Language for Work initiative complements resources offered on the Council of Europe's LIAM website. Now, LIAM stands for Linguistic Integration of Adult Migrants. And the target group for this website are policy and decision makers. I'll put the link into the chat in a few minutes. And a final thought to highlight why Language for Work is really central to the ECML's mission. Language remains one of the biggest barriers for adult migrants. Without strong language skills, many end up in low-paid, low-skilled work, a loss for them, for the economy, and for society. But when migrants have access to quality language learning, everyone benefits. People can find meaningful work, contribute to the economy, and help build a stronger and more inclusive society. So we must not ignore what's really at stake here: democracy itself. Without skills in the language of the host country, meaningful participation is out of reach. Clearly, investing in quality language education isn't just about jobs or integration, it's about protecting and strengthening democracy for all of us. Therefore, the ECML, as a Council of Europe organization, is committed to supporting this essential work. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our experts. The coordinator, Mathilde Grünhagen-Monetti from Germany, Alex Braddell from UK, Annemarie Nubenhout from the Netherlands, Christophe Portefin from France, and our expert from Sweden, that's Kerstin Scherswart. So thank you for sharing your expertise. And now over to you, Mathilde.
Dear colleague from near and far away, welcome to our webinar. I will now present our short agenda. A couple of words about our network and the website, then why our role on our focus on second language development for work, but particularly at work. My colleague Alex will then introduce what we mean by language for work and the lesson we have learned by interacting with our colleagues, particularly in Europe, in our network, in order to support work-related language learning. Kerstin, Alex, Annemarie and Christophe will then present some examples of practice which has proved to be successful, and I will probably, if there is time, say something about Germany. At the end, we will introduce you some consideration about implication that we have drawn out of this practice. And if we have time, or as long as we have time, we are interested in hearing your thoughts, observation, questions. Why language for work? Migration is a significant feature in most European countries. New migrants are mostly adults of working age. Labor market integration is a top priority for them, for individuals, for the whole society and economy. But, as Susanna before said, limited language skills trap many migrants in low-skilled, low-paid jobs, risky jobs, a loss for all concerned, for the individual people, but also for the economy and the society at large. We recommend, and we are naturally supported, very happy to be supported by the OECD, we recommend tailored language education to support sustainable labor market integration. I insist on the word sustainable, not only a quick labor market integration, but sustainable, where people can work according to their qualification and not below their qualifications. Therefore, our aim of the network and the website to help practitioners, researchers, policymakers to share expertise, develop and implement practice. Now, Alex, the floor is for you.
I think we perhaps missed a slide to introduce the network.
Yes, the third slide, the second slide, yes. Can you please go back? One back again?
Well, there's nothing in between this one and the next one. It's just this one and then, all right, there it is. Okay.
Funny. Okay, strange because we saw it before,
Yes.
But that doesn't matter. It was a slide on the language for work. Just a word about here. This is the slide. It is an initiative of the European Centre for Modern Languages, as Susanna said, emerged from two projects and a very old one at the beginning of the 2000s. It is an international network with more than 300 members, particularly for Europe, but also from overseas, from Canada and USA and Australia, and in more than 40 countries. It offers resources professionals, researchers, practitioners, employers, social partners to support work-related language learning by adult migrants. We have a website available in English and French, which contains a resource bank with contributions in the original language. And then, for example, a list of competencies which have proved useful to different actors in French, English, and in German. with other materials, for example, two quick guides, which are in 16 languages. One has been particularly successful because it addresses directly employers or providers or teachers to set up such, and why set up such courses or such offer in directly in the workplace. We hope that you will visit our website and join the network. Online, it is quick, easy, and free. And now, Alexander, to you.
So we thought it might be helpful just to spend a moment explaining what's in our minds when we talk about language for work. So these are the language skills for labour market integration. And that process starts pre-employment. So language skills for vocational education and training, employability skills, training, and also the language skills for finding suitable employment. So all those skills around job search, CV writing, applying for jobs, going through interviews, and so on and so forth. In employment, we have in mind the language skills people need to make a positive contribution at work, and that includes both their task but also their role. So when we say task, we think about job-specific activities, working as a member of a team, health and safety, quality management, customer care, but also there's role, all those employment processes people have to go through, having an understanding of their rights and responsibilities at work, being able to, apply for leave, call in when they're sick, and also the socializing that's an important part of work, both in terms of the individual and also the team. And then there are also the language skills to participate in learning and development. And that includes both formal workplace training, but also all that informal on-the-job learning that goes on continuously. And then there is continuing professional development outside the workplace for people to develop their careers and progress. And it's very clear in our experience that work-related language is what you might call a boundary crossing field. So it involves consideration of policies, consideration of learning, migration, of course, and also the world of work, understanding how workplaces function, and all the labour market issues associated with that. So it's a complex area can be viewed from many different perspectives. Next slide, please. Myself and colleagues have been working in this field for many years, and it's obviously, the learning is rich and diverse, but if we have to summarize it, I think this is as good as anything in terms of what we've learned about support for work-related language learning over the years. Learners will benefit from help to understand the specifics of work-related communication, the what, the why, and the how, because of course a lot of language is about context and the larger cultural context, and that's certainly true for work-related language. Learners are also going to benefit from help to develop and sustain the attitudes and behaviors that enable language learning, because of course, the learner at the end of the day has to do the learning. Nobody else can do it for them. And their attitudes and behaviors are really key to that. Supporters, the people with whom the learner is engaging, can also benefit from help to engage with the learner in ways that promote learning. And particularly important, I think, among these supporters are providers of vocational education and training, teachers, also employers, trade unions, labour market agencies, and other workplace actors, managers, worker colleagues, workplace trainers. And I think it's helpful to think of this through the concept of shared responsibility. We all have potentially a positive role to play in helping develop work-related language. And on the Language for Work website, we have a section devoted to all the various actors who can be helpful and what sort of competencies help them to be helpful. So I recommend anybody with an interest can have a look at that. And I think this can also help, we can think about this in terms of direct and indirect support for work-related language learning. Direct support, when we talk about that, we have in mind support that goes right to the learner. So, for example, teacher-led instruction, classroom courses, coaching, that sort of thing, but also self-access study programs, resources that the learner uses directly. And then there is all the support that can be delivered to the learner indirectly by creating learning-friendly environments. And at work, that would certainly include a raft of workplace structures, roles, resources, practices that can be helpful to language learning. And in one of our practice examples, we'll look at that in more detail. Also in educational settings, particularly vocational education and training, those programs can be delivered in ways that are helpful to language learning or frankly unhelpful. So it's obviously important that people are as aware as possible of the things that promote and enable language learning. Next slide, please, Anna-Marie. We're now wanting to share with you some actual examples from different countries to show you how some of these issues play out in practice.
So this is an example from Sweden about language advocates, and it started with a question from the employers in the elderly care in Stockholm, and they said, what can we do about the low level of the Swedish language in elderly care among the employees? So it started as a project between researchers, employers, teachers, learning providers, etc. And the language advocates are a way of providing sustainable support for language learning at work. And it's a program underpinned by a concept of shared responsibility for language learning at work. It's not only the learner who should be responsible, and not only the teacher, but the colleagues, the managers, the employers, etc. So it's a holistic focus on workplace communication and inclusive support for all at the workplace, including those who have Swedish as their mother tongue. So you can take the next speech. So what is then a language advocate? It's somebody who is employed already at the workplace. It's not somebody who comes from the outside, so to say. Could be a social care worker, could be a cleaner, machine operator, etc. And this employed person is given training to support language development at work. And the language advocate should be appointed by the manager. So the manager has a responsibility as well to choose somebody who is the opportunities to function as a language advocate. And the language advocate undertakes the role in paid work time and has no extra pay for this task. But of course, the employer can give some extra bonus for doing the work well. So there is a special training to become a language advocate, because there are lots of things you have to be aware of and to know to be able to work as a language advocate. And those things are issues about what helps people to learn a second language, and what is intercultural communication. How do we communicate with each other? How do we express each other when communicating at the work? It's about dyslexia and how to support a learner without taking over the task, and how to support the managers to deal with language issues at the workplace. It's model on change management role of peer champion role, for example, dignity champion, digital champion, customer care champion, etc. And the purpose is to keep a focus on language at the workplace, and also to offer individual colleagues support ad hoc. It's not intended to replace a qualified teacher, but in some cases you can work together with the teacher and language advocate and manager can support each other. So on this picture you see compiled some of the most important tasks for a language advocate. It's from the answers from those language advocates that are working, and we ask them, what do you do when you work as a language advocate? And the most important issue here is to raise awareness of language use at work, to understand how do we use the language in our workplace. How do we do when we ask the elderly something, for example, or when we talk to each other? And what needs are there to use the language? It encourages people to keep an open mind about language difficulties, which is quite an important task to fulfill. And support participation at work, for example, in team meetings. It can support somebody to take the courage to say something at the meeting and to understand what's going on at the meeting. And on the other side, you see they create simple materials. For example, how do you do when you answer a phone call? Or how do you do when you fill an accident report? And one of the most common and most important tasks is to help to solve misunderstandings that occur at work. It's quite common that you express things different in different languages, and you don't always understand each other, what you intend to say. And there the language advocate is a big support. And of course, they act as a point of contact for new staff and trainees when they have questions about routines and about how to use the language. And it helps staff, all staff, not only the L2 speakers, with documentation or written communication. So you can take the next picture, please. Here you have two films that show how language advocates work. The first one is quite old nowadays, but it shows how a language advocate can work at the workplace, and also the colleagues, the elderly, and the managers. And the second film is not that old, it's a few years old, but it shows language advocates and the trainees, the managers, and different point of views from researchers, from also an economic discussion about what economic effects do you have of using language advocates at work. So I really think you should watch these films if you want to know more about them. And you can also, of course, look at the material, the practices at the Language for Work website. It's about språkombud, the Swedish word for language advocate. And we can say that it started in 2008. And nowadays, it's quite a big business, and it has become more or less the standard for how you work with language at the workplace in Sweden, especially in care. So we have around more than 5,000 language advocates now, and it's also spreading. The method is spreading to other countries nearby, like Norway, Finland, and Iceland, and also Luxembourg, and other countries are to come as well. So yeah, that's about what I intended to say about language advocates.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for this inspiring example. I will now continue to present a short example from the Netherlands. It has a much smaller scope. It's called the My Plan approach, which is a form of coaching that workers can practice during classes, such as communication at work. It was based on a bigger project, a European project that did some research about how you can use coaching for self-directed learning. And I assisted in that project, and on that I based this My Plan approach. What is the My Plan approach? I will show you shortly in a short video. And I will tell you something about it first. It's a group discussion between a teacher and migrant workers during a class, and about their life goals. And then the second part is peer coaching. So workers coach each other to reflect on their learning process and to plan a new, to make a plan for learning during the week. And the goal is that they develop and sustain attitudes and behaviors and strategies that enable learning. So the My Plan approach is a weekly classroom activity. In the beginning, the group has conversations about long-term goals and learning strategies, such as what's your life plan, what's your life goal at the moment, how much time do you think you need to reach your goal, and how will learning the second language help you to reach that goal? How are you trying to learn the new language right now, and who's helping you? And then in subsequent sessions, we start to make a plan for the week. First, the teacher is leading, and then soon the workers take over. And they ask them each other questions like, what is your learning plan this week? And where and when are you going to study? Who can you ask for help? And then in the next session, they look back and ask, how can I ask you? How did it go? What went well last week? And then, of course, we celebrate the small successes and make new plans. Like, what will you do differently this week? What's your new plan for the coming week? I made a video about my own, the people I worked with a couple of years ago. It's a group of 5 cleaners that they work at a mental health care institute in Amsterdam. And they had a short course, communication of Dutch at the workplace, specifically for cleaners. And of course, the course was very short. So it was very important that they developed more awareness and confidence and strategies to go on learning after that short course, and also to practice more during the course in their own time. And because people, well, all adults have very busy and full lives, that really takes some planning. I think this short fragment of the video illustrates that co-workers support each other, and often they are better coaches than language teachers because they are very curious. I think this example of these two colleagues also illustrates that it really helps if someone really wants to know what your plan is and what your days look like. Of course, there is much more in the video, but we don't have time for that right now. What I wanted to add to finish is that we have here at VU University in Amsterdam, we have a training course for teachers who are language and literacy teachers. And this approach, my plan approach, is part of it. So I think when we speak about dissemination, around 300 teachers in the Netherlands now know the My Plan approach, and some of them, some schools adapted the approach not only for language-focused trainings, but also for general courses for adult migrants. And of course, on the website, there is more detailed information. The video is not available on the website because the people I worked with preferred only to show that they only show it live and not spread the video any further, which of course I respect. I think that's it for now. And I pass the word to my French colleague, Christophe Portefin.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It's this example of the French example is to show you that when politics and specific clinic center put in place some laws and some fundings, it can work. The most important to know about France that in 1971 it was compulsory to pay for training, but it was not compulsory to train your employees. Now it's compulsory. So it's very interesting because in every company, you have to train your employees. And especially migrants, but it's really new this year. It was in July. Now employees can officially be trained in French language in working hours. So it changes things now because usually it's quite difficult to put in place a training in a company because it's difficult to manage people and to manage your employees to go to get a training outside your working hours. So now it's easier. And specifically, we've got the CLEA framework. CLEA is key competencies for adults, and including French, of course, but space and time, digital skills, teamwork, and so on. So it's very important to see that even if we are talking about language for work, when you train employees in companies, usually it's not only a question of the language, it's the language and many things around the language, the second language at the workplace. So I will talk about a specific vocational training. It's Clé en Main. It has been put in place in the cleaning sector for many years now. You've got two training routes, MCCP certificate. MCCP is Maîtrise des compétences clés de la propreté. So it's more or less basic skills training, especially for non-literate adults. For limited literacy, usually people never went to school or less than 5 years, or it's for people, sometimes they can speak fluently French, especially for former colonies, but they don't speak, they write, they don't write, it depends, but it's really a low level. And you've got the CLEA certificate, and especially in the cleaning, and it's for reskilling people, for French second language people, and so on. And you can upskill formal, non-formal, informal skills. So it's very interesting. So as you can see, many people have been trained, and it's the cleaning sector would like to train more people and more and more and more, but it's not always easy, because you have to work with companies and to help them understand that it's not only compulsory, but it's necessary. And if you are working in a training in a training provider, you have to be qualified to get the right to deliver such trainings. Anne-Marie, please. Okay, so if we manage Clé en Main, what after many years in putting this kind of trainings in France, we can see that there are some main obstacles. It's very difficult to provide this kind of training in small companies, because it's difficult to let your employees go in trainings if you are working, I don't know, in a small companies with 5 or 6 employees, because in the cleaning sector, there are a lot of companies who hire only between 5 and 10 people. So it's difficult to let your people be trained, because how can you do your work without employees? And you have to manage, as a company, to manage your work activity with training of 150 hours. So when you are coming from a country where it was difficult to go to school, you want to learn the language, you want to write, you want to read, and 150 hours, it's not a lot to learn this. But for a company, 150 hours, it's really a huge amount of hours. So it's difficult to manage between the expectations of employees and the reality of the company. So you have to manage both to put in place such trainings. Some years ago, it was 300 hours, but now it's difficult because it was too much for companies. Because if you train people, I don't know, 1 day a week, if it's 300 hours, it's not just 1 hour of trainings. It's 1 hour and a half, sometimes 2 years, 1 year and a half or 2 years. So it's a very long term to train your people. So it's difficult. So what are the keys to success? Especially in the cleaning sectors, there is a formal agreement between social partners with fundings. So if you are a cleaning company, you don't have to pay anything for the training. It's free for companies. It's not really free. They pay, but it's free. You have to pay your employees, but you don't have to pay for the training. So it's very easy because there's a lot of fundings. It's not only in the cleaning sector in France, because there are other sectors, but so few. People are trained at work. It's easier. You can imagine if you are living in a very big city, sometimes you know where you come from, you're at home to go to your work, but you don't know how to read a map, you don't know to take a subway and so on. So it's very, it's practical if you can train your people at work. And you have to put in place, as Mathilde said, an effective needs and demand analysis. It's compulsory if you want to put in place a good training fit with the needs of the company and the needs of your employees. So what are the main results? Sustainable work, and it's not just a word, sustainable work. Usually we can see that when we have trained people, after 1 year, they want to stay in your company. They are very happy now, because sometimes they are waiting for, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years, 25 years to get such a training. So it's really a good point if you want to retain your employees. And you can get a career progression, because with the language you can get a career progression. It's really useful. I know some people, they were workers and now they lead a very big company. So it's very interesting to see that language for work was an issue to get a career progression. There are some direct results at the workplace, and especially with the clients, because now you can speak with your client. You can be able to work with other colleagues from many different countries, because the second language at the workplace is the main issue between people, because they are coming from many countries with many different languages. And it's very good for social integration, because when you put in place such pathway of vocational training with language for work, it's not only for work, because if you can speak, if you can write, if you can read at work, it's okay at home in your daily life. So it's not only a question of work. And it's very important for the confidence, individual confidence, and it's really coming from the field, but you can see that when people are aware with the second language, it's not the same life anymore. They are living in another world, so it's very useful. Okay, so what can we do, and what are the 5 rules we could see to support language development in vocational education training classroom? You have to work on the language and of the subjects. It have to be clear, a clear teaching with very specific learning objectives. It's not the language for the language. It's the language with specific objectives, and it's because it's a pragmatic way for people. So it's not like at school. You don't. I don't know if I speak about the French language. We put such a long time to remember all the verbs, the way you say je mange, tu manges, and so on and so on and so on. So it's very useful to work in a specific objectives. You have to clarify your objective to help people know what they will understand, what they will learn in the classroom. You have to work a lot as a trainer, as a teacher, to make up your own material. It's not only to take, I don't know, a second language textbook. No, you have to build your material, because you have to adapt it to the people you are face off and to the context. It's even in a cleaning company, there are many different jobs, so you have to adapt everything every time. Of course, you have to work on vocabulary, not only a list of terms, but you have to contextualize your vocabulary to help people to use these specific and technical terms, because it's very important. I think in French there's something very funny about vaporisateur. So if you want to put a product on I don't know, on a desk, and so usually people say cheap sheet, the cheap sheet. So it's a sound for the material. But if you have to buy because you are a leader, but you don't know the word, you say I'd like to buy some, I don't know, 10 cheap sheet. No, it's not 10 cheap sheets, it's 10 vaporisateur. So it's very important to know the specifics, the technical terms. Of course, you have to encourage interaction in every object. It's not only interaction in speaking, but also in writing, in listening. It helps people to work together, and it's a way of helping them, to learn the language. And obviously, to get a feedback, to give a feedback, I don't know because it's not if a trainer is going to a classroom and is doing his I don't know, is teaching, is training, and then it's over. No, you have to get a feedback each time you see people, each time you see employees, to help them to understand what they learn is useful, and they have to know it for the next week, because as I said before, it's quite difficult to you have to manage the training with the work, and people have to know that each time they come in a classroom, they will get something new to use it in their daily life, in their working life. And it's very important to encourage this feedback between the trainers and the learners.
Okay, just very quickly, in Germany we don't have a similar legislation as in France. This aspect of the politics and the policies in place is very, very important. We find out other possibility to implement and to put in place offers at the workplace without this money without the funding, the official funding which exists, for example, in France. We find big help in activating cooperation between employers, providers, and, for example, trade unions and workers' representatives. For us, at the moment, they are the key. The workers' representatives are the key actors because they have a mandatory task to support the integration of migrant workers at work. But they have to be but we have to raise their awareness for the importance of supporting language development at work, because a lot of people, a lot of work, a lot of them think that it is a private initiative. It's an obligation of the migrant to learn the language of the country and the work. So we have put in place a training, awareness raising training for workers' representatives and trade unions. We have put in place a training for teachers and providers in order to develop the competencies necessary to offer tailored courses or tailored provision for the workplace. What Christoph said before, if you want to develop a tailored provision, you have to make a demand and need analysis. To be able to make a demand and need analysis, to be able to transform the results of your survey into a curriculum and into concrete lesson planning. So we have developed 40 hours training, and nowadays we can support the teachers or show the teachers how they can get support for the development of training materials with the help of artificial intelligence. And we are implementing the so-called scenario technique, which is a very interesting way to link classroom learning and work, a sort of action-oriented learning. Now, at the moment, we are developing quality criteria to offer, for example, quality criteria for choosing providers and teachers, because sometimes people in company, either the employer or the personnel manager or the workers' representative, are not expert on it. They don't know how to choose the training provider or the teachers. And another thing that we are developing at the moment are resources in order to help make the case to employers. Collecting argumentation in favor of taking the big effort of offering such provision during paid working time. And it is a big challenge because the big costs for the employer are to free people during the working hours. They're not the costs of the teachers. This is for them peanuts for most of them. And then, of course, there is the issue of the small companies which are really facing other problems than the bigger ones. But as we have learned, if there is the will, there is a way to solve these problems. At the moment, we are more concerned with developing strategies and materials for developing language as a key to democracy. It starts from giving migrants employees a voice to voice their own interest, their needs, their point of view, anti-discrimination and anti-racism, which are really big issues and unfortunately growing issues in the workplace. And in order to react to it, you also need language. I am finished, Annemarie. I think. No, there are some implications. Sorry. Yes, at the end, we would like to draw your attention to the macro lessons we have learned. It is important to develop motivating and attractive policies and measures and fundings in order to realize this work-related language learning. And then we need, and it is important to develop partnership between actors which, at least in Germany, are not used to cooperate with each other, like language providers, labor market agencies, employers, trade unions, and so on and so forth. And of course, for providers and teachers, are facing new challenges and competencies. For example, we said to carry out a demand and need analysis, to develop tailored curriculum. They need outreach, they need flexibility. But the good news is that we have really a large wealth of experience and examples of practice from all Europe, and Language for Work can help you to meet these challenges. So we hope that we can have a couple of minutes for questions. I don't know. Take advantage of the ECML offer for training and consultancy events. If you are interested, apply for a training and consultancy in your country in 26 through the official representative of your country. Here you find the list of the official representative of your country and some more information. I think ECML is going to put online or now in the chat the addresses. Thank you very much for your interest. And I don't know if there is a little bit of time for questions. I give the floor to the organizer.
Thank you very much indeed, Mathilde, Christoph, Alexander, Kerstin, and Annemarie. That was really a wealth of information on this very, very important topic of how do we integrate adult migrants, how do we provide linguistic support for them in order to make the best out of it for all. I found it really encouraging to hear that even small steps can be taken to effectively support language learning in work-related contexts. So big thank you for your wide range of examples, real-life examples. I think that was really very practical. Now we do have a few questions. I'm looking at the Q&A screen at the moment. An interesting question regarding intercomprehension. This is an approach coming from the pluralistic approaches framework, where related languages are linked in the learning process, which means that Romance languages, for example, they build on the learning of, let's say, French and Spanish. But I wonder if in your context, this is a big topic, since many of the migrants are coming from out of Europe, linguistic contexts and cultural contexts. Is intercomprehension at all something that you've been looking at? Mathilde, would you like to respond?
I think it depends. It depends on the cases. We have, for example, in the meat processing industry in Germany, a lot of workers coming from Southeast Europe, Bulgarian and Romanian, but it is not always possible because some of them, sometimes it is possible to use the way over the Russian language, because some of them have been socialized at school with Russian. I mean, there are ways, but it is not in the reality. You have to look at who do you have there concretely. And there is an important issue. It is important to be realistic and to see how important it is, the communication with the German colleagues, because the lack of communication really supports the racism. We've heard so much biases from both sides because they don't communicate. They don't know, they don't have the language to know each other. And it is, I would focus more on this aspect. So very often we go through common languages, for example, the Russian language, to explain and to make comparison with the German language. This is, one has to be realistic about the concrete situation that you have to face. That is my experience and my answer. But if my colleagues want to expand on it.
I completely agree with you, Matilda, and I'd like to add one thing, which is that for the peer coaching specifically, you use the entire linguistic repertoire that people have. So, for example, if two people both speak Arabic, maybe not as their first language, but also as a contact language, they can use whatever language they're most comfortable in for the peer coaching.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Also, Matilda, big thank you for pointing again at the need for awareness raising, for combating racism and negative attitudes, because what we really need is a positive approach to supporting migrants to integrate into the workforce and into the society altogether. Now, in the end, I would like to use the opportunity to promote the ECML's offer for training and consultancy, which is a two-day workshop on demand from ECML member states. This is where our ECML language for work experts actually go to concrete contexts and provide training and support for professionals in ECML member states. I see that my colleague Katarina has kindly put the link to this training and consultancy offer in the chat. We will have a new call in starting beginning of October. It's open for 1 month, so until the end of October. And this is where you, if you feel that training in your context would be helpful, you can contact your national representative and see if he or she supports your request. And this way, in 2026, there might be a language for work training and consultancy activity in your country. I think we've come to an end. Altogether, I think we really, with this topic, language for work, want to make a difference in for the migrants, of course, but for our societies. It makes a difference if we all together create a positive learning environment. Thanks a lot to our experts for your support, for your work in the area. And dear participants, come back and tune in for our next webinar. We're planning for a webinar in November on the topic of mediation. So see you then, maybe. Thank you and goodbye.